My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 35 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the one holding my family together. I worked hard, built my career in real estate, and made enough to buy a home that eventually became the very roof over my brother's head. That's the irony. While my brother, Ethan Donovan, drifted from one failed job to another, I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who always had to come through. And yet, despite everything I've given, somehow I became the villain in his story. It started one Friday evening when my phone buzzed nonstop. Old friends, business contacts, even clients I hadn't spoken to in months, all sending cryptic messages. Are you okay? Is it true, Ak? Do you need help? Confused, I finally called back a longtime colleague. What she told me knocked the air right out of my chest. According to Ethan, I was bankrupt, completely broke, struggling to survive. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't bankrupt. I was the owner of the very house he was living in, rent-free. My financial stability was the reason he still had a roof over his head. But the rumor spread like wildfire. Clients grew nervous. Friends whispered. Neighbors stared. And all I could think was, why would my own brother betray me like this? That night, sitting alone in the dark of my living room, I felt a heaviness I'd never felt before. I had carried Ethan for years, and now he was trying to bury me with lies. This wasn't just a rumor. This was my breaking point. Growing up in the Donovan household was like living under two different sets of rules. My younger brother, Ethan, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, was the one expected to be responsible, quiet, and perfect. My mother, Janet, had a sharp tongue and an even sharper eye for my flaws. If I came home with a B+ on a test, she'd ask why it wasn't an A. If I wanted to join a school trip, she'd lecture me about wasting money. But when Ethan brought home failing grades or skipped practice, she'd just sigh, ruffle his hair, and say, "Boys will be boys." My father, Richard, was present in body but absent in spirit. He worked long hours, and when he was home, he spent most of his time behind a newspaper or in front of the TV. He avoided conflict, which meant he avoided me, because calling out Ethan would have started an argument with Mom. Ethan quickly learned that charm could get him out of anything. If he wanted a new bike, he got it. If I asked for new shoes, I was told to get a part-time job. By the time I was 14, I was babysitting, tutoring, and saving every penny. Ethan, meanwhile, spent his weekends with friends, his allowance handed to him without question. But what hurt the most wasn't the material imbalance, it was the emotional one. When I won a debate championship, Mom barely acknowledged it. When Ethan scored a single touchdown in junior varsity football, the whole family celebrated with cake and balloons. Even as kids, I could feel the weight of responsibility being loaded onto my shoulders. I had to clean up after Ethan's mistakes, lie for him when he got into trouble, and somehow keep the family's reputation intact. My parents didn't see me as a daughter to be nurtured. They saw me as a safeguard, a buffer, the one who made sure Ethan never faced the consequences of his choices. That pattern followed us into adulthood. And standing in the shadow of that favoritism, I learned one painful truth. In my family, love was conditional, but loyalty was demanded, especially from me. By the time I was in my late 20s, I had already carved out a stable career for myself in real estate. It wasn't easy. I worked 12-hour days, survived on cheap coffee and instant noodles, and pushed through nights when I thought my body would collapse from exhaustion. But I kept telling myself, if I can just build enough, maybe my family will finally see me. Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't hold down a job longer than 6 months. He bounced from sales gigs to tech startups, always with a big story about how the next thing would make him rich. And every time it fell apart, he landed back on my doorstep. At first, I helped out with small things, covering his car payment, paying off a credit card bill. But soon, the small things turned into thousands of dollars. I co-signed a loan he swore he'd pay back. He defaulted. I stepped in. When his landlord threatened eviction, I let him move into the house I had bought, a house I was still paying off. I told myself I was being a good sister. That's what family does, right? But deep down, I knew Ethan wasn't grateful. He was entitled. I still remember one Thanksgiving. I had worked the entire week without sleep to close a deal. I came home exhausted, hoping for at least a little acknowledgement. Instead, I overheard Ethan bragging to my parents in the kitchen. He said, "Claire's lucky I let her buy that house. She wouldn't have managed without my advice." Advice? He hadn't lifted a finger. My parents laughed and nodded as if they believed him. I stood frozen in the hallway, my chest tight, realizing in that moment that no matter what I did, it would never be enough. But I kept going. I thought maybe if I just proved myself more, if I kept helping, kept sacrificing, they would finally see my worth. Instead, the more I gave, the more they took. And every sacrifice I made, every dollar I handed over, chipped away at the one thing I couldn't afford to lose, my self-respect. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Ethan decided to rewrite the story of my life by turning my generosity into weakness and spreading lies about the one thing I had fought hardest to build, my financial independence. The rumor hit me like a storm I never saw coming. At first, it was whispers and phone calls, vague comments from colleagues, and awkward silences at business meetings. But the breaking point came one Saturday evening at a neighborhood gathering. I walked into the community center, smiling politely, carrying a tray of food I'd spent hours preparing. But instead of warm greetings, I felt eyes scanning me from head to toe. Conversations hushed when I passed. A woman I barely knew leaned in and whispered, "Claire, I'm so sorry about your situation." It must be hard. I froze. "What situation?" I asked. Her eyes widened like she had said too much. She stammered. "Ethan said, you filed for bankruptcy." My heart stopped. In that room full of people, I suddenly felt naked, stripped of dignity, stripped of truth. I forced a smile, set down the tray, and walked away before anyone could see the tears burning in my eyes. Later that night, I confronted Ethan. He leaned back on the couch in my living room, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. "Why are you telling people I'm bankrupt?" I demanded, my voice shaking. He didn't even flinch. "Relax, Claire. It's just talk. People gossip. Besides, if you were smart, you'd know how to spin it into a comeback story." Everyone loves a redemption arc. I stood there stunned. Not only had he lied, he didn't even care. And when I turned to my parents for support, they looked away. My mother muttered, "Maybe he didn't mean it that way." My father stayed silent, as always. In that moment, something inside me broke. I had carried Ethan for years, and now he was dragging me down into the dirt, and my parents were letting him. So I did the only thing I could. I picked up my keys, walked out the door, and let the silence of the night swallow me whole. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running away. I was walking toward something. An ending. The night I walked out of my parents' house, I didn't go back. For days, I moved like a ghost, silent, numb, and detached from everything around me. I stopped answering calls, stopped checking messages. The people I had sacrificed everything for had proven, without a shred of doubt, that I meant nothing to them. At first, the thought of leaving felt terrifying. How could I cut myself away from the family I had spent my entire life trying to hold together? But the more I sat in the silence of my own apartment, the clearer it became. Staying would destroy me. So, I made the hardest decision of my life. I sold the house, the very house Ethan had been living in, rent-free. He begged, he yelled, he accused me of betraying family. But I had reached my limit. I told him coldly, "If you can spread lies about me owning nothing, then you can live with nothing from me." With the money from the sale, I didn't buy another big property. I wanted freedom, not anchors. I packed only what I needed: clothes, a few keepsakes, my laptop, and moved 2 states away to a quiet coastal town in Oregon. Starting over was humbling. I rented a tiny studio apartment above a coffee shop. My furniture was secondhand, my meals simple, my bank account smaller than it had been in years. But for the first time in my adult life, every decision was mine. Every bill I paid, every meal I cooked, every sunrise I watched from my window, it was all mine. I picked up part-time consulting work in real estate and slowly began to rebuild. The people in my new town didn't know me as Ethan's sister or the Donovan daughter. They just knew me as Claire. That anonymity was liberating. I met people who valued kindness over appearances. A neighbor, Maya, invited me over for dinner when she realized I was alone. The owner of the coffee shop downstairs, Daniel, offered me free coffee whenever I worked late. These small gestures felt foreign, almost unbelievable. But little by little, I let myself trust again. Healing wasn't instant. Some nights, I still cried myself to sleep, replaying Ethan's words, my mother's silence, my father's indifference. But each morning, when I woke up in that tiny studio, I reminded myself, I had chosen this. I had chosen me. And in that choice, I was finally learning what it meant to be free. For a few months, the silence was blissful. No late-night calls, no panicked texts, no drama. But of course, it didn't last. It started with subtle attempts. A voicemail from my mother, her voice tight with manufactured concern. "Claire, your brother is going through a rough patch. You should call him." Then came an email from my father, short and detached. "Your mother isn't well." Maybe it's time you came home, I wanted to believe them, but I had learned enough to recognize manipulation when I saw it. Sure enough, a week later, I found out from an old friend back home that my mother was perfectly fine. She had been out shopping the very day she claimed to be sick. Then Ethan reached out. At first, it was a simple text. "Hey, can we talk?" I ignored it. The next day, another. "I didn't mean for things to get that bad." Then the guilt-tripping began. "Family is all we have, Claire. Don't turn your back on me." I stared at those words on my screen, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Family? What had Ethan ever done to prove he was family to me? Family doesn't spread lies to destroy your reputation. Family doesn't watch you break and call it entertainment. The final straw came when a mutual acquaintance called to check in. She told me Ethan was going around saying I had abandoned him, that he was homeless now because of me. Never mind the fact that he had months to find a new place after I sold the house. Never mind the fact that he had burned every opportunity given to him. That night, sitting at my small kitchen table with the ocean breeze slipping through the window, I realized something powerful. I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my money, not my forgiveness. For the first time, their voices no longer carried weight. Their lies no longer defined me. I had finally found the strength to resist the pull of their chaos, and I wasn't going back. It's been 2 years since I walked away from my old life, and sometimes I still catch myself wondering how different things might have been if my family had truly loved me for who I was. But then I look around at the life I've built, the quiet mornings, the genuine friendships, the peace I feel inside my own skin, and I know I made the right choice. For so long, I thought leaving meant failure, that if I gave up on Ethan or stopped trying to earn my parents' approval, I was somehow a bad daughter, a bad sister. But the truth is, walking away wasn't abandonment, it was survival. I've learned that family isn't about bloodlines or last names. Family is about who shows up when the world turns against you. It's about who cheers for you when you win, and who holds your hand when you lose. By that definition, my brother was never truly family. Neither were the parents who chose silence over defending me. The people I've met since leaving, the ones who accepted me with no conditions, who saw me as more than the rumors, they've shown me what family can actually mean. So if there's one thing I want anyone listening to my story to take away, it's this. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. If the people around you only love you when you sacrifice everything for them, then that's not love. It's control. I lost my old life. But in return, I found something far greater. Myself. And for the first time, that's more than enough. Because in the end, blood makes you related. But love, real, unconditional love, makes you family.